Right now, in this exact moment, there is a part of you that knows something has to change. Not tomorrow, not next week, not the version of change you keep postponing with excuses like, "I'll start when I feel ready," but now, the kind of change that forces you to confront how you think, how you act, and how you are living your life. Because if you are honest with yourself, the real battle has never been out there. It has always been within you. It is the voice that tells you to wait, the comfort that convinces you that what you're doing is enough, the quiet pull toward mediocrity that feels safe but slowly keeps you from becoming who you are capable of being. And every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are making a decision. You're either sharpening your edge or you're letting it dull. This is why thinkers like Marcus Aurelius never wrote for comfort. His words were not meant to inspire you for a moment and then fade. They were written as reminders, practical instructions for maintaining control in a world that constantly tries to pull you away from it. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That is not motivation. That is a standard. And deep down you already know what needs to be done. You know where you lack discipline. You know where you avoid discomfort. You know where you are holding yourself back. The problem is not awareness. The problem is execution, because strength is not something you arrive at. It is something you negotiate daily between who you are right now and who you are choosing to become. As Epictetus put it clearly, no one is truly free unless they have control over themselves. Not their money, not their environment, not their circumstances, themselves. What you are about to hear is not a collection of tips. It is a system, a framework built on 10 non-negotiable daily practices that shape people into something stable, focused, and unshakable. If this already resonates with you, take a moment to like and subscribe, because what comes next is not just information. It is something you can apply immediately to start rebuilding control over your life. Now clear the noise. Pay attention. This is where you stop drifting and start becoming intentional. One, work on your mind every day. Your mind is the center of everything. Not your circumstances, not your environment, not the people around you. Everything begins with how you think. And yet this is the one area most people neglect. They train their bodies. They chase external results. They react to situations without ever examining the thoughts that drive those reactions. But your mind is not neutral. It is constantly being shaped. Every thought you repeat becomes familiar. Every belief you reinforce becomes stronger. And over time, those patterns define how you experience reality. If your thinking is scattered, reactive, and filled with noise, your life will reflect that. If your thinking is calm, focused, and intentional, your life will begin to align with that as well. This is why the Stoics emphasized mental discipline above everything else, because your mind is the only place where true control exists. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And once you fully understand that, something shifts. You stop trying to control everything around you, and you start controlling what is within you. Working on your mind every day is not complicated, but it requires consistency. It means being aware of what you allow into your mental space, the information you consume, the conversations you engage in, the thoughts you entertain. Most people do not realize how much of their mental state is influenced by what they expose themselves to. Constant scrolling, negative conversations, unnecessary comparison. These things do not just pass through your mind, they shape it. And if you do not take control of that process, it happens automatically. That is why working on your mind also means creating space. Space to think, to reflect, to observe yourself. It might be through reading something meaningful, writing your thoughts down, or simply taking a few minutes to sit without distraction. These moments may seem small, but they build awareness, and awareness is where control begins. Another important shift is how you respond to your own thoughts. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What can I learn from this?" That single change transforms your perspective. You move from reacting to understanding, from frustration to clarity. Over time, this builds something powerful, stability. Because when your mind is disciplined, your actions follow. When your thinking is clear, your decisions improve. And when your inner world is strong, external chaos loses its ability to shake you. At the end of the day, your mind is either being shaped by you or by everything around you. There is no middle ground. So every morning, remind yourself, I control how I think, and then prove it through how you focus, how you respond, and what you allow to stay in your mind. 2. Work on your emotions every day. Emotions are not the problem. Lack of control over them is. Most people live as if their emotions dictate their actions. They feel anger and they react. They feel fear and they hesitate. They feel doubt and they stop. And over time, this creates a pattern where external events constantly determine internal states. But emotional strength is not about eliminating emotions. It is about managing them, understanding them, and choosing how to respond to them. As Seneca observed, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. In other words, much of the pain we experience is not caused by what happens, but by how we interpret it. This is where emotional control begins, not in suppressing feelings, but in separating the event from the reaction. You cannot stop difficult situations from happening. People will disappoint you, plans will fail, unexpected challenges will appear. That is part of life. But what you can control is how much power those situations have over you. When anger rises, you do not have to act on it. When fear appears, you do not have to obey it. When doubt enters your mind, you do not have to accept it as truth. This is the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is automatic, response is intentional, and the space between those two is where your power is. Developing this skill requires practice. It starts with awareness, noticing when emotions arise, recognizing the patterns behind them, and then creating a pause, a moment where you choose not to act immediately. That pause may feel small, but it changes everything because it gives you control. Over time, that control becomes stronger. You begin to respond more calmly, more clearly, more intentionally. You stop taking everything personally. You stop letting external chaos dictate your internal state, and gradually you build emotional stability, the kind of stability that allows you to stay grounded even when things around you are not. Everyday life will test your emotions. That is unavoidable, but each test is also an opportunity to practice control, to strengthen your response, and to build resilience. So remind yourself, I control my emotions. They do not control me, and then live in a way that makes that statement real. 3. Work on your discipline every day. Without discipline, nothing else holds. You can have ambition, you can have talent, you can even have moments of motivation, but without discipline, all of it fades, because discipline is what carries you when motivation disappears, and it will disappear. That is something most people do not accept early enough. They believe they need to feel ready, feel inspired, feel energized before they take action. But that mindset creates a cycle where action becomes dependent on emotion, and emotions are inconsistent. Some days you feel driven, other days you feel tired, distracted, or uninterested. If your actions depend on how you feel, your progress will always be unstable. This is why discipline matters. It removes emotion from the decision. You act because you said you would, not because you feel like it. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, when you struggle to get out of bed, remember your duty as a human being. That idea may sound simple, but it carries weight because it shifts your focus from comfort to responsibility, from what you want in the moment to what you know needs to be done. Discipline is built in small decisions. Waking up when you said you would, finishing what you started, doing the work even when it feels repetitive or difficult. These actions are not exciting. They are not always visible, but they accumulate, and over time they build something that cannot be faked. Consistency. Another important part of discipline is recognizing the voice that tries to stop you, the one that says just 5 more minutes, just one more distraction, you can do it later. That voice feels reasonable, but it is the voice that keeps you where you are. and if you listen to it too often, it becomes stronger. The Stoic approach is different. You do not argue with that voice. You do not negotiate with it. You act despite it, because action weakens hesitation, and repetition builds control. Discipline is also a form of respect. Respect for your goals, respect for your time, respect for who you are trying to become. Every time you follow through, you reinforce that respect. Every time you break your word to yourself, you weaken it. That is why even small promises matter. Setting one simple goal each day and completing it builds trust. And that trust becomes powerful, because once your mind starts believing that you follow through, everything changes. You stop doubting your own actions. You become reliable to yourself. And that reliability is what makes progress sustainable. So every day remind yourself, I do what I say I will do, and then prove it not once but consistently. 4. Work on your purpose every day. Without purpose, effort feels empty. You can stay busy, you can stay productive, but without direction, all that movement leads nowhere. Purpose is what gives your actions meaning. It is what connects what you do today to who you are becoming long term. And without it, it is easy to drift, to follow what is convenient, to chase what looks good in the moment. But drifting leads to dissatisfaction, because deep down you know you are capable of more. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, a person's worth is connected to what they aim for, not in terms of external success, but in terms of intention. What are you building? What are you moving toward? What matters to you beyond immediate comfort? These are questions most people avoid, not because they are difficult to answer, but because answering them requires responsibility. Once you define your purpose, you can no longer pretend you do not know what to do. Working on your purpose every day does not mean having everything figured out. It means staying connected to your direction, revisiting your goals, adjusting your actions, making sure what you are doing aligns with what you actually value. This is where clarity develops, not through thinking alone, but through action. You try, you learn, you adjust, and over time your path becomes clearer. Another important aspect of purpose is understanding that it is not always comfortable. In fact, it often requires discomfort, choosing growth over ease, choosing long-term progress over short-term. The Stoics believed in living according to reason and virtue. In simple terms, that means doing what is right, not what is easy. And when you apply that consistently, your actions begin to align with something deeper. Purpose also evolves. What matters to you now may not be the same later, and that is normal. What matters is that you remain engaged in the process, that you keep moving, that you continue building, because purpose is not found by waiting. It is developed through action. So each day ask yourself, what is one thing I can do today that moves me forward? Then do it even if it is small, because small actions repeated consistently build something meaningful, and over time, that meaning becomes direction. 5. Work on your self-control every day. Self-control is where everything becomes real, because it is one thing to understand what you should do. It is another thing to actually do it when it matters. Most people do not fail because they lack knowledge. They fail because they cannot control their impulses in the moment. They react too quickly. They chase distractions. They give in to comfort when discipline is required, and in those moments they give away control. As Epictetus made clear, no one is truly free if they are not in control of themselves. You can have resources, opportunities, even success. But if you cannot control your reactions, your desires and your habits, you are still being controlled. Self-control, it is the ability to stay grounded when everything around you tries to pull you in different directions. When anger rises, you do not explode. When temptation appears, you do not immediately give in. When your ego wants to react, you pause. That pause is where your power exists, because in that moment, you have a choice to follow the impulse or to direct your response. And every time you choose control over reaction, you reinforce something important: authority over yourself. This is why self-control often shows up in quiet ways. Walking away from unnecessary conflict, staying silent when reacting would make things worse, choosing discipline over immediate pleasure. These actions may not look impressive on the surface, but they build strength, real strength, the kind that does not depend on circumstances, the kind that remains even when things are difficult. Another part of self-control is managing indulgence. Not everything that feels good is beneficial, and not everything that is uncomfortable is harmful. Learning to take what you need instead of everything you want creates balance. It prevents excess. It keeps you focused. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort for this reason, not to suffer unnecessarily, but to remind themselves that they could function without constant comfort, that they were not dependent on ease. When you develop that mindset, something changes. You stop needing everything to feel good before you act. You act because it matters. And that is what creates consistency. So each day ask yourself, am I in control of my actions, or am I reacting without thinking, and then adjust? Because self-control is not built once, it is built daily. 6. Work on your patience every day. Patience is one of the most underestimated forms of strength. In a world that constantly pushes for speed, immediate results, and instant feedback, the ability to wait, to stay consistent, and to trust the process has become rare. But real growth does not happen instantly. It takes time, effort repeated over days, weeks, and years. And without patience, most people give up before that effort has a chance to produce results. They start something, they expect progress quickly, and when it does not happen, they lose focus, they move on to something else, and the cycle repeats. This is why patience matters, not as passive waiting, but as controlled persistence. As Seneca suggested, time can resolve what logic cannot. In other words, not everything can be rushed. Some things require time to develop, to mature, to take shape. Patience is what allows you to stay committed during that process. It keeps you moving forward, even when progress is not immediately visible. It prevents you from making impulsive decisions that disrupt long-term growth. When you rush, you make mistakes. You force outcomes. You create unnecessary stress. But when you are patient, you create. It means continuing to act while allowing results to unfold naturally. Another important aspect of patience is perspective. Not every delay is a problem. Not every setback is a failure. Sometimes what feels like a lack of progress is actually part of the process, something that is preparing you for what comes next. This is why comparing your progress to others can be misleading. You do not see their full journey, only the visible parts, and when you measure yourself against that, you create unnecessary pressure. Patience removes that pressure. It allows you to focus on your own path, on your own timeline, and on your own growth. Every day you show up, even when nothing seems to change, you are building something. Consistency, and consistency eventually produces results. So remind yourself, I trust the process even when I cannot see the outcome yet, and then continue, because patience is not weakness. It is controlled strength. 7. Work on your silence every day. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of power. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, trying to prove themselves, trying to respond to everything, silence stands out. Not because it is loud, but because it is controlled. Most people speak too quickly. They react before they think. They try to explain themselves to people who are not even trying to understand. And in doing so, they lose energy. They lose clarity. They lose control. But when you learn to use silence intentionally, something changes. You stop reacting automatically. You begin to observe, to process, to choose your response, instead of being pulled into every situation. As Marcus Aurelius suggested, the best response is often not to become like what you are reacting to. And silence allows you to do exactly that. It creates distance. Distance from unnecessary conflict. Distance from emotional reactions. Distance from situations that do not deserve your attention. Silence is not about avoiding communication. It is about refining it. Speaking when it adds value, remaining quiet when it does not. This requires discipline, because your ego will want to speak. It will want to defend, to explain, to prove, but not everything requires your input. and not everyone deserves your energy. When you learn to stay silent in the right moments, you conserve that energy. You stop feeding situations that do not benefit you, and you gain control over your reactions. Silence also sharpens your thinking. When you are not constantly speaking, you begin to hear more, not just others, but yourself. Your thoughts become clearer, your understanding deepens, and when you do speak, your words carry more weight because they are chosen, not automatic. So each day, practice restraint, pause before speaking, ask yourself if what you are about to say is necessary, and if it is not, let silence do the work, because real power does not need to announce itself. It is shown through control. Take work on your gratitude every day. Gratitude changes how you see everything, not by altering your circumstances, but by shifting your focus. Most people are conditioned to look for what is missing, what they do not have, what has not worked out yet. And when that becomes the default perspective, it creates a constant sense of lack. No matter how much they achieve, it never feels like enough. But gratitude interrupts that pattern. It redirects your attention to what is already present, what you have built, what you have overcome, what still exists in your life right now. As Marcus Aurelius reflected, very little is needed to live a good life, and most of it already exists within you. This is not about ignoring ambition, it is about balancing it. You can still pursue growth, still aim higher, still work toward more, but without losing appreciation for what you already have, because without that appreciation, progress feels empty. Gratitude also creates stability. When you recognize what is already present in your life, you become less dependent on external validation, less affected by comparison, less driven by the need to constantly prove something. Instead, you operate from a place of sufficiency, and from that place your actions become more intentional, more grounded, more meaningful. Practicing gratitude does not require much time, but it requires consistency. It can be as simple as acknowledging a few things each day, moments, opportunities, even challenges that helped you grow. Because gratitude is not limited to positive experiences. It can also come from recognizing how difficulties shaped you, how setbacks taught you something, how obstacles forced you to adapt. This perspective changes your relationship with struggle. It turns it from something negative into something useful. Over time, this builds resilience, because you begin to see value in experiences that once felt purely difficult, and that reduces the emotional weight they carry. So each day, take a moment, acknowledge what is already there, and remind yourself, I have more than I think, because when your focus shifts, your experience follows. 9. Work on your character every day. At the end of everything, beyond discipline, beyond focus, beyond even your results, there is one thing that defines you more than anything else. Your character. Not what you say, not what you show publicly, but who you are when no one is watching, because that is where the truth exists. It is easy to appear disciplined when others are observing. It is easy to act with integrity when there is something to gain. But character is revealed in the moments where there is no reward, no recognition, no consequence, only your choice. As Epictetus emphasized, you must first decide who you want to be and then act accordingly. That decision is not made once, it is made daily in small quiet moments. Keeping a promise when it would be easier to break it. Telling the truth when it would be easier to avoid it. Doing what is right when no one would notice if you did not. These moments seem small, but they build something permanent. Integrity. And integrity creates stability. Because when your actions align with your values, you do not need to pretend. You do not need to manage an image. You become consistent inside and out. The Stoics believed that virtue was the highest form of success, not external achievements, not recognition, but alignment, because external things can be taken away, character cannot. When you build it, you carry it with you, in every situation, in every challenge, in every decision. So each day remind yourself, my actions define who I am, and then act in a way that makes that statement true. 10. Work on your inner peace every day. The final layer is not about control, it is about stillness. Because even if you build discipline, strengthen your mind, and develop self-control, without inner peace, everything still feels unstable. You are constantly reacting, constantly chasing, constantly trying to fix what is outside of you. But peace does not come from controlling everything. It comes from understanding what does not need to be controlled. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "There is no place more peaceful than your own mind if you learn how to access it." That peace is not dependent on circumstances. It does not require everything to go your way. It is built internally through perspective, through discipline, through acceptance. Working on your inner peace every day means protecting your mental space, not allowing every opinion, every situation, every piece of information to affect you. It means choosing what you engage with and what you let go. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means not letting reality control your internal state. When something goes wrong, you do not collapse, you adjust. When things are uncertain, you do not panic. You stay grounded. When others react emotionally, you remain stable. This is what real strength looks like. Not force, not intensity, but control. Calm, consistent control. Inner peace also requires acceptance. There are things you cannot change, situations you cannot control, outcomes you cannot predict. Fighting those things creates frustration. Accepting them creates clarity. Because once you accept what is outside your control, you can focus on what is within it, and that is where your power exists. So each day, take a moment, step back, breathe, and remind yourself, my peace is my responsibility. Final thought. Everything you have just heard comes down to one simple truth. You're building something every day, whether you realize it or not, through your thoughts, through your actions, through your decisions. You're either building strength or reinforcing weakness. There is no neutral. Every choice moves you in one direction or the other. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that life is not shaped by occasional effort, but by daily practice. That is why these 10 principles matter. Your mind, your emotions, your discipline, clears, through purse, your self-control, your patience, your silence, your gratitude, your character, and your inner peace. Together they form something powerful.